The breaking point, the candlelight flickered across the white tablecloth, casting dancing shadows that seemed to mock the silence stretching between them. Sophia adjusted her navy dress for the third time, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for her water glass. Across from her, Marcus stared at his untouched pasta, his jaw clenched in that familiar way that made her stomach twist with dread. "You're not even trying to have a conversation," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the gentle murmur of other diners at Romano's, the Italian restaurant where they'd shared their first official date 8 months ago. Tonight was supposed to be special celebration of their anniversary, chance to reconnect after weeks of growing distance. Marcus finally looked up, his dark eyes cold and distant. "What's there to talk about, Sophia? You've already made it clear what you think." Her heart sank further. Earlier, she'd simply asked if they could spend more time together, mentioning how lonely she'd been feeling. It wasn't unreasonable they used to text throughout the day, share meals, plan weekend adventures. Lately, he treated her like an obligation, someone to check off his list between work and his friends. "I just miss us," she whispered, fighting back tears. "I miss how we used to be." "People change," he replied curtly, stabbing his fork into his linguine. "Maybe you should accept that instead of trying to control everything." The word control hit her like a slap. All she'd done was love him, support his career ambitions, celebrate his victories, and comfort him through setbacks. When head caring, become controlling in his eyes? That's not fair, Marcus. "I've never tried to control you. You just what? I want to know where I am every second? Want me to check in constantly? Want me to prioritize your feelings over everything else? In my life?" His voice rose slightly, causing an elderly couple at the next table to glance over with concern. Sophia felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and hurt. "I want to feel like I matter to you," she said, her voice breaking. "Like we matter." Marcus threw his napkin onto the table with such force that their wine glasses trembled. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The drama, the expectations, the emotional manipulation." He stood abruptly, pulling out his wallet and throwing to 20s onto the table. "I can't do this anymore tonight, Marcus. Please don't leave. Can't we just talk about this?" But he was already walking away, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor as he headed for the exit. Sophia sat frozen, watching the man she loved disappear through the heavy oak doors without a backward glance. The warm restaurant suddenly felt suffocating, filled with the curious stares of strangers who had witnessed her. Humiliation, she remained at the table for another 20 minutes, mechanically sipping her wine and trying to process what had just happened. The waiter approached twice, asking gently if she needed anything, and both times she managed a weak smile and shook her head. Inside, she was screaming. When she finally gathered the courage to leave, she found Marcus long gone from the parking lot. Her car sat alone under the harsh fluorescent lights, and as she fumbled with her keys, the tears she'd been holding back finally came in desperate, gasping sobs that echoed off the empty concrete. An unlikely messenger. 3 days passed in a blur of unanswered texts and sleepless nights. Sophia had called Marcus twice, left one voicemail, and sent for messages that showed his read, but remained unanswered. Each ignored attempt felt like another small death, confirming what she was beginning to fear, that she truly didn't matter to him anymore. On Thursday evening, as she sat on her couch staring at her phone, a desperate idea took hold. She scrolled through Marcus's Instagram until she found what she was looking for. A photo from last month showing him with his arm around a petite brunette with kind eyes and a bright smile. The caption read, "Best sister ever," with a heart emoji, Lily Chen. Marcus had mentioned her only a handful of times, usually in passing references to family dinners or her college achievements. Sophia knew she was 22, studying graphic design, and that Marcus was protective of her. They'd met briefly at a birthday party and once at a coffee shop, exchanging little more than polite hellos. It felt invasive, almost stalkerish. But Sophia found herself clicking on Lily's profile and then, before she could lose her nerve, sending a direct message. "Hi, Lily. This is Sophia, Marcus's girlfriend. I know this is weird, but could we talk? Something happened and I don't know what to do." To her surprise, Lily responded within an hour. Of course. Are you okay? Want to meet for coffee tomorrow? The next afternoon, Sophia sat in a corner booth at Brew and Bean, her hands wrapped around a lukewarm latte she couldn't bring herself to drink. When Lily arrived, her expression immediately shifted from curious to concerned. You look terrible, Lily said, sliding into the opposite seat. Despite the blunt words, her tone was gentle, worried. What happened? The simple question broke something open in Sophia. The story poured out not just about the restaurant incident, but about months of feeling invisible, of Marcus's growing coldness, of conversations that felt more like interrogations, where she was always somehow in the wrong. He used to send me good morning texts every day, Sophia said, wiping her nose with a napkin. He'd call during his lunch breaks just to hear my voice. We'd plan these elaborate weekend trips, even if we just ended up staying in and watching movies. But lately, she trailed off, struggling to find words for the gradual erosion of affection. Lily listened without interrupting, her dark eyes growing more troubled with each revelation. When Sophia described the restaurant scene, Lily actually winced. He just left you there? Alone? I keep thinking maybe I'm being too sensitive, too needy. Maybe he's right and I'm trying to control him. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. But I love him, Lily. I love him so much, and I don't understand how we got here. Lily reached across the table and squeezed Sophia's hand. You're not being too sensitive. What you're describing, that's not love, Sophia. It's someone who's checked out but doesn't have the courage to say so. The words hit harder than Marcus's abandonment had. Hearing it from his sister, someone who knew him better than almost anyone, made it real in a way Sophia had been refusing to acknowledge. Has he said anything to you? About us? About problems? Sophia asked, dreading the answer. Lily hesitated, chewing her bottom lip in a gesture that reminded Sophia painfully of Marcus. He hasn't talked about your relationship specifically, but ... double quotes. She paused, seeming to weigh her words carefully. He's been different lately. Angry, distant, even with family. Mom's been worried sick about him. Different how? It started maybe 3 months ago. He stopped coming to family dinners. Stopped returning calls. When we do see him, he's either completely shut down or snapping at everyone over nothing. Lily's voice grew softer. I've been wondering what was going on, but I never imagined he was treating you like this. Sophia felt a strange mix of validation and heartbreak. At least she wasn't imagining the change in him. But knowing others had noticed made her feel even more foolish for staying, for hoping, for believing his excuses about work stress and busy schedules. I don't know what to do, she admitted. Lily's grip on her hand tightened. You deserve so much better than this, Sophia. And I think it's time someone told Marcus exactly what he's throwing away. Hidden truths revealed, Lily stared into her coffee cup, swirling the foam with her spoon, as if the patterns might reveal the right words. The silence stretched between them until she finally looked up, her expression heavy with something Sophia couldn't quite identify. Guilt, perhaps, or the weight of secrets she'd carried too long. There's something you should know, Lily began, her voice careful and measured. About 3 months ago, Marcus got some news that really shook him up. Our dad had a minor heart attack. As Sophia's breath caught, Marcus had never mentioned anything. About his father being sick, is he okay? He's fine now? Completely recovered? But for a few days, we thought... Lily's voice cracked slightly. We thought we might lose him. Marcus took it harder than anyone expected. Dad's always been his hero, you know? It's a strong, invincible figure who taught him to be tough, to never show weakness. The revelation hit Sophia like a puzzle piece clicking into place. She remembered Marcus becoming more withdrawn around that time. But when she'd asked if everything was all right, he'd dismissed her concerns with his usual just work stuff deflection. Why didn't he tell me? The question came out more wounded than she'd intended. Lily sighed deeply, 'cause telling you would mean admitting he was scared, and Marcus doesn't do scared. He'd rather push everyone away than let them see him vulnerable. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. It doesn't excuse how he's treating you, Sophia. Nothing does. But I think understanding might help. What else? Sophia asked, sensing there was more. His job situation is worse than he's letting on. promotion he was promised got given to someone else last month. He's been working overtime trying to prove himself, but I think he knows he's fighting a losing battle. Lily's expression grew frustrated. And instead of talking to anyone about it, he's just ... building walls. Sophia thought about all the evenings Marcus had come home claiming to be exhausted from successful meetings, all the times he'd bragged about impressing his boss. She'd celebrated with him, cooked his favorite meals, tried to be supportive of what she thought was his thriving career. "He's been lying to me about everything," she whispered. Not lying exactly, more like creating a version of reality where he doesn't have to face his failures. Lily's voice grew fiercer. "But Sophia, his problems don't give him the right to make you feel worthless. I've watched our parents' marriage for 24 years, and I've never seen Dad treat Mom the way Marcus has been treating you." Comparison stung because Sophia had always admired Marcus's parents' relationship. They were affectionate, communicative, genuinely seemed to enjoy each other's company even. After decades together, I keep thinking, if I just love him enough, if I'm patient enough, he'll come back to me, Sophia admitted. "The Marcus I fell in love with is still in there somewhere." Lily's expression softened with sympathy. "Maybe he is. But the Marcus you're dealing with now is someone who's so afraid of appearing weak that he's willing to destroy the best thing in his life to maintain his facade." She reached for Sophia's hand again. You can't love someone back to emotional health, especially when they won't even admit there's a problem. "So what do I do?" "First, you stop making excuses for him. Stop accepting breadcrumbs and calling it a feast." Lily's voice grew stronger, more determined. "You're an incredible person, Sophia. You're kind, successful, beautiful. You light up every room you walk into. I saw that the first time we met, and I remember thinking Marcus was so lucky to have found you." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken about her with such genuine appreciation. "Second," Lily continued, "you let me talk to him. Really talk to him. Not as his little sister who he can dismiss, but as someone who loves him enough to tell him the truth about what he's becoming. What if it makes things worse, Sophia? How could they get worse? He's already treating you like you don't exist. At least this way, he'll know that his behavior has consequences. That people are watching, that he can't just pretend everything is fine while he destroys his relationships." The weight of hope and fear battled in Sophia's chest. Wanted to beg Lily not to interfere, terrified that confronting Marcus might push him away permanently. But a stronger part, the part that was tired of feeling invisible and worthless, knew that Lily was right. "Okay," she whispered. "Cocktail. Him." The confrontation Marcus was sprawled on his couch in wrinkled clothes, a half-empty bottle of beer balanced on his chest as he mindlessly scrolled through his phone. The apartment that had once been his pride clean organized, decorated with care now, reflected his inner state. Takeout containers cluttered the coffee table. Laundry overflowed from a basket in the corner. And the blinds hadn't been opened in days. The sharp knock on his door made him groan. He'd been successfully avoiding human contact for 3 days, ignoring calls from work, friends, and especially Sophia. The knocking persisted, accompanied by a familiar voice. "Marcus, I know you're in there. Open the door." Lily, of all the people who might show up unannounced, his sister was the last one he wanted to face. She had an annoying ability to see through his defenses, to ask questions he wasn't ready to answer. "Go away, Lily. I'm not in the mood for company. Too bad. We need to talk, now." The tone in her voice, steel wrapped in silk, reminded him uncomfortably of their mother. With a resigned sigh, he hauled himself off the couch and unlocked the door. Lily pushed past him without waiting for an invitation, taking in the mess with raised eyebrows. "Wow, this is even worse than I expected. Thanks for the pep talk. You can leave now. Sit down, Marcus." Her voice carried an authority that surprised him. This wasn't his college-aged little sister. This was a woman who'd clearly come with a purpose. He slumped back onto the couch, suddenly feeling exposed under her scrutiny. If this is about missing Sunday dinner again, this is about Sophia. The name hit him like a physical blow. He'd been working so hard not to think about her, not to remember the hurt in her eyes at the restaurant. not to acknowledge the dozens of unanswered messages on his phone. I don't want to talk about Sophia. Well, I do, 'cause yesterday, she sat across from me in a coffee shop and cried for an hour about how the man she loves treats her like garbage. Lily's voice was controlled, but Marcus could hear the anger simmering beneath. She told me how you've been ignoring her, dismissing her feelings, making her feel like she's asking for too much when all she wants is basic human decency. Marcus felt his defenses slam into place. You don't know what you're talking about? Sophia is ... She's clingy, demanding. She wants constant attention, constant reassurance. Stop. Lily's voice cut through his excuses like a blade. Just stop with the lies, Marcus. I know you better than that, and more importantly, I know her. The woman I talked to yesterday isn't clingy or demanding. She's heartbroken and confused because someone she loves has suddenly started treating her like an inconvenience. It's complicated, no, it's not. Lily moved closer, her dark eyes blazing. You're scared and hurt, and instead of dealing with your problems like an adult, you're taking it out on the one person who loves you unconditionally. You're being a coward. The word hit its mark. Marcus shot to his feet, his face flushing with anger. You have no idea what I'm dealing with right now. Work is falling apart. Dad almost died. Everything his dad is fine. He had a minor heart attack and he's completely recovered. But you've turned it into this huge trauma that justifies treating everyone around you like crap. Lily stood too, matching his anger with her own. And your job? So what if the promotion didn't work out? Sophia would have supported you through that if you'd actually talked to her instead of lying and pretending everything was perfect. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. The careful walls he'd built around his failures, his fears, his overwhelming sense of inadequacy began to crumble under his sister's relentless honesty. You don't understand, he said, his voice quieter now, almost broken. I can't be weak. Not with her. She deserves someone strong, someone successful, someone who has their life together. So instead, you're giving her someone cruel? Someone who abandons her in parking lots and ignores her calls. Lily's voice softened slightly, but her words remained sharp. Marcus, she doesn't want you to be perfect. She wants to be your partner, not your audience. I don't know how, he admitted, the words barely a whisper. I don't know how to be vulnerable without falling apart completely. Then learn, figure it out. Go to therapy, talk to mom and dad, do whatever it takes. Lily sat back down, her expression shifting from anger to desperate concern. But stop destroying the best relationship you've ever had, because you're too proud to admit you're human. Marcus sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to really think about Sophia, not the version of her he'd created in his mind to justify his behavior, but the real woman who'd stood by him, celebrated his victories, never once made him feel less than worthy of love. I've really screwed this up, haven't I? He said finally. Yeah, Lily replied without hesitation. You have. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The silence stretched between them as Marcus contemplated the wreckage of his own, finally beginning to understand the true cost of his cowardice. Finding strength in unexpected places, 2 weeks had passed since Lily's confrontation with Marcus. And Sophia found herself sitting in the same coffee shop where this journey had begun, but everything felt different now. The desperate, hollow ache in her chest had been replaced by something steadier. Not happiness exactly, but a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. Marcus had reached out. Of course. First through texts filled with apologies and explanations about work, stress, and family issues. Then a long voicemail, where his voice cracked as he tried to explain his fears about vulnerability and failure. Finally, he'd shown up at her apartment, with flowers and tears, begging for another chance. I was scared, he'd said, standing in her doorway looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. Scared of disappointing you, scared of being weak, scared of losing control. But I ended up losing you anyway, and that's so much worse. The old Sophia might have melted at his words, might have fallen back into his arms, and promised that everything would be okay. But Lily's friendship had shown her something crucial: what it felt like to be truly seen and valued by someone who didn't need her to be smaller or quieter or more understanding than was healthy. "I know you were scared," Sophia had replied, her voice calm but firm. "But your fear became my pain, Marcus. For months, I made myself smaller, trying to accommodate your emotional unavailability. I blamed myself for wanting basic kindness from the person who claimed to love me." She'd seen the moment her words hit him, the way his face crumpled with genuine remorse. But remorse wasn't enough anymore. Now, watching Lily approach their usual corner table with 2 coffee cups and her characteristic warm smile, Sophia felt grateful for the unexpected friendship that had emerged from the wreckage of her relationship. They'd been meeting weekly, sometimes to talk about Marcus, but increasingly just to talk about life, dreams, work, the future. "How are you feeling about starting therapy?" Lily asked, settling into her chair, nervous but good. "It's time I figured out why I was willing to accept so little for so long." Sophia wrapped her hands around her mug, savoring the warmth. "What about Marcus? How's he doing?" "Better, I think. Started counseling too, and he's actually talking to Mom and Dad about real things instead of just surface stuff." Lily's expression grew thoughtful. "He asks about you sometimes. Not in a way that expects me to play messenger, just ... Wondering if you're okay." Sophia nodded. She'd heard through mutual friends that Marcus was making genuine changes, addressing the issues that had made him so emotionally unavailable. Part of her was proud of him for doing the work, but a larger part had realized that his growth, however genuine, didn't obligate her to wait around for him to become the partner she'd needed all along. "I hope he finds happiness," she said, and meant it. "But I'm learning that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of their potential." Lily smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Look at you, getting all wise and self-aware." "I had a good teacher," Sophia replied. "You showed me what it looked like to be cared about without conditions, to have someone fight for me instead of expecting me to fight for scraps of attention. It's what people do for people they love. Real love doesn't keep score or make you beg for basic respect." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the afternoon crowd bustle past the window, Sophia reflected on how strange life could be. She'd lost the relationship she thought she wanted, but gained something more valuable: the knowledge that she deserved to be someone's priority, not their project or their convenience. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, a colleague who'd been asking her to coffee for weeks. She'd finally said yes to dinner next Friday. Not because she was over Marcus, not because she was trying to prove anything, but because she was ready to discover what it felt like to be chosen by someone who wasn't afraid of his own feelings. "Ready for a new adventure?" Lily asked, noticing her smile. "Yeah," Sophia said, surprising herself with how much she meant it.